Ambassador Lee Minho felt the cold metal of the defendant's podium beneath his palms as the final vote appeared on the massive holographic display floating above the chamber. The number glowed red against the crystalline walls, 847-0. Every single species in the Galactic Council had voted for humanity's complete destruction. The chamber itself seemed to mock this moment, carved from living crystal that had grown over thousands of years. Its walls contained the fossilized remains of civilizations that had stood in this very spot, pleading for their lives. Now humanity joined that collection of extinct voices. The decision is final and unanimous, declared the Valerian High Arbiter. The alien's body was made of what looked like living glass, constantly shifting and reforming as it spoke. Its voice carried no emotion, just cold certainty. Humanity represents a clear and present danger to galactic stability. Orbital bombardment of Earth will begin in exactly 72 standard hours. Minho's neural implant, a small device planted behind his left ear, automatically began recording and transmitting everything back to Earth. The technology was one of humanity's newer inventions, something that let him send information instantly across impossible distances. The aliens had similar technology, but humans had made theirs smaller, faster, and more efficient. That efficiency was exactly what terrified the galaxy around him. Representatives from hundreds of different worlds sat in their designated seats. The Zephyrians, with their bird-like features and hollow bones, chirped softly to each other in obvious relief. The massive Krulin delegates, each one the size of a small building, rumbled their approval in deep bass tones that made the floor vibrate. Even the peaceful Harmony Collective, beings of pure energy who rarely took physical form, pulsed with satisfied light. For the first time in the 50 years since humanity had joined galactic society, Minho saw something new in their eyes. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. They were finally going to be rid of the humans. Minho understood their fear. In the 5 decades since first contact, humanity had done things that made the other species deeply uncomfortable, where it took most civilizations 1,000 years to establish a single colony on a new world. Humans had terraformed 12 planets in 30 years. When trade negotiations typically lasted decades and involved careful cultural exchanges, human merchants somehow closed deals in days, while leaving everyone happy with the results. Human diplomats had an unsettling habit of forming alliances that lasted for generations after a single meeting. Human scientists solved problems that had puzzled galactic researchers for centuries, often by approaching them from angles no one else had considered. Human engineers built things that worked better than they had any right to, using principles that other species insisted were impossible. But what really frightened the galaxy was humanity's attitude toward limitations. Every other species in the Council understood that there were natural boundaries to what could be achieved. Resources were finite. Physics imposed absolute rules. Some problems simply could not be solved. Humans seemed to view these concepts as personal insults. When told that faster-than-light communication was theoretically impossible, humans had invented the neural implants. When informed that certain diseases could never be cured, human doctors had rewritten the genetic code of viruses to make them beneficial instead. When faced with planets that could not support life, humans had simply changed the planets. The galaxy had watched this pattern for 50 years. Growing more nervous with each human breakthrough, they began to realize that humanity did not simply refuse to accept defeat. They refused to accept the very concept of defeat. To humans, every setback was temporary, every obstacle was a puzzle to be solved, and every natural law was a suggestion rather than a rule. Minho had seen the fear growing in council sessions over the years. Delegates who had once welcomed humanity's innovative solutions now viewed them with suspicion. Species that had benefited from human technology began to worry about what humans might want in return. The galaxy had started to ask a dangerous question. If humans could solve any problem and overcome any limitation, What would happen when they decided other species were problems to be solved? The answer, apparently, was genocide, as Minho walked toward the chamber's exit. Passing between rows of alien delegates who avoided making eye contact, he felt something that surprised him. Not fear, not despair, but anticipation. The galaxy had just made the same fundamental error that every predator in Earth's history had made when facing humans. They had assumed that cornering their prey meant the hunt was over. On Earth, the greatest predators, lions, tigers, bears, sharks, had all learned the same lesson over millions of years of evolution. Humans were not apex predators because they were stronger or faster or more dangerous than other creatures. Humans were apex predators because they never gave up. When wounded, they got cleverer. When outnumbered, they got more organized. When facing extinction, they got creative. The galaxy had just voted to exterminate humanity, believing this would solve their problem. Instead, they had given humans exactly what they needed to justify removing every limitation they had voluntarily accepted in the name of peaceful coexistence. Minho's neural implant finished transmitting the verdict to Earth. As he reached the chamber door, somewhere far below the surface of his homeworld, systems that had been dormant for decades were already beginning to awaken. The galaxy wanted to learn what humans were capable of when they stopped playing by civilized rules. They were about to find out. Dr. Kim Jae-woon pressed his palm against the cold metal scanner for the third time in 15 years. The machine beeped softly, reading the unique patterns in his skin and blood vessels. Deep beneath the busy streets of Seoul, 3 kilometers underground, where no surface dweller had ever walked, the Warborn facility began to wake up from its long sleep. Emergency lights flickered on in sequence, casting red shadows across walls, lined with hundreds of cylindrical pods. Each pod was the size of a small room, filled with blue-green liquid that had kept its occupant alive and unchanged for over a decade. Steam hissed from vents as ancient air recycling systems started working again, filling the massive underground space with the smell of ozone and metal. "Computer, initiate Revival Protocol 7, Jae-woon said to the empty air. His voice echoed strangely in the vast chamber, bouncing off surfaces that had been silent for so long. The pods began to drain their liquid, pumping it away through tubes that disappeared into the facility's walls. Inside each transparent cylinder, human figures began to move for the first time in 15 years. But these were not ordinary humans sleeping inside these machines. They were volunteers who had given up their normal human bodies to become something entirely different. Park. Sujin's pod opened first with a soft hiss of escaping gas. She sat up slowly, her modified muscles moving with perfect control despite having been motionless for so long. Water dripped from her dark hair as she stepped out onto the metal floor. Her eyes, which looked normal except for a slight silver tint around the edges, scanned the room automatically. She was seeing things no normal human could see: heat signatures, electrical currents, even the stress patterns in the metal walls around them. Her bones had been replaced with something stronger than steel but lighter than aluminum. Carbon nanotubes, woven together in patterns that made them nearly impossible to break, formed her skeleton. Her muscles had been genetically changed to react faster than thought itself. Her nervous system had been rewired to process information at speeds that would overload a normal human brain. "Status report," Sujin said. Her voice sounded different than it had 15 years ago. The modifications to her throat and vocal cords allowed her to speak at frequencies that could carry across battlefields, even through the noise of explosions and gunfire. She could also speak so quietly that only enhanced ears could hear her, or pitch her voice to cause physical pain in certain alien species. Dr. Jae-woon helped Choi Hyun-woo climb out of his pod. Hyun-woo's genetic modifications were different from Sujin's, but equally extreme. His heart had been replaced with something that pumped synthetic blood more efficiently than any natural organ. His lungs could extract oxygen from air so thin it would kill normal humans, or hold their breath for over an hour underwater. The Galactic Council voted to destroy Earth, Jae-woon explained, watching more pods open around them. We have 68 hours before their ships begin bombing our planet. Soo-jin's enhanced eyes focused on the tactical displays that covered one wall of the chamber. Normal humans would see numbers and charts showing impossible odds, thousands of alien warships against Earth's small defense fleet, but Soo-jin's modified brain processed the information differently. Where others saw certain death, she saw opportunities, weak points in enemy formations, supply lines that could be cut, command ships that could be captured. Dr. Hein said, his voice perfectly clear, despite having been asleep for 15 years. How many of us are there? Jae-woon smiled grimly. 10,000 Warborn across all facilities worldwide. Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, Cairo, Sydney. Every major city has a facility like this one. Each of you represents the same question. What happens when humans stop limiting themselves? Around them, more pods continued opening. Men and women emerged, all of them moving with the same perfect control as Soo-jin and Hyun-woo. Their eyes held the same silver tint, their voices carried the same modified tones. They had volunteered for this transformation 15 years ago, when humanity first realized that peaceful coexistence with the galaxy might not always be possible. The Warborn project had been humanity's greatest secret. While diplomats talked peace and trade agreements, scientists had worked on a different kind of solution. They had asked a simple question: what if humans could be better, faster, stronger, more resilient, more intelligent, more dangerous? What if they could take everything that made humans successful and improve it? 3 kilometers above them, Earth's surface was in chaos. Emergency broadcasts told civilians to evacuate major cities. Military bases prepared for attacks they knew they could not stop. Government leaders made desperate calls to alien allies, hoping someone would speak up for humanity. But deep underground, the Warborn prepared for something completely different. They were not planning to run or hide or beg for mercy. They were planning to fight, using abilities the galaxy had never encountered before. The aliens had voted to exterminate humanity because they feared what humans might become. They were about to discover they had been right to be afraid, but wrong to think they could stop it. The galaxy had wanted to see what humans were truly capable of when they stopped holding back. The Warborn were humanity's answer to that challenge. Commander Han Dongmin gripped the controls of his fighter as it shot through space at speeds that should have turned him into liquid paste. His heart, no longer the original organ he had been born with, pumped synthetic blood through arteries reinforced with bioengineered materials. The G-forces that pressed against his body would have crushed any normal human pilot, but his modified skeleton absorbed the pressure like it was nothing more than a gentle push dot around him. 49 other Warborn pilots flew in formation, their ships moving through space in ways that defied everything the galaxy knew about combat flying. They twisted and rolled through maneuvers that normal physics said were impossible, their enhanced reflexes allowing them to react to threats before their conscious minds even registered danger. Far ahead, the alien fleet waited in Earth's orbital space, like a massive wall of death. Admiral Tishkar commanded over 800 warships arranged in perfect geometric formations that had been used successfully for thousands of years. Each ship was larger than anything humans had ever built, armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. The Admiral himself had used this same fleet to destroy 17 different civilizations, and none of them had ever managed to fight back effectively. "Sir, I'm detecting unknown vessels approaching at incredible speed," reported Lieutenant Vextel from his position at the tactical station. His 4 arms worked frantically over his controls, trying to make sense of the readings. The acceleration pattern suggests whoever is piloting those ships should be dead from the G-forces. Admiral Tishkar studied the display screen with growing confusion. The human ships were tiny compared to his massive vessels, but they were moving in ways that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. They spun and dived and climbed through space like they were swimming through water instead of flying through vacuum. Perhaps the ships are controlled by computers instead of living pilots, Taishkar suggested to his bridge crew. No biological creature could survive those maneuvers. His answer came when Dongman's squadron reached the outer edge of the alien fleet and immediately opened fire. The Warborn pilot's enhanced nervous system processed the three-dimensional battlefield around him like a normal person might read a simple book. His brain, modified with neural implants that worked faster than lightning, calculated angles and distances and velocities in ways that made combat feel like an elegant dance. His fighter had been built specifically for pilots, like him, humans, who are no longer limited by normal human weaknesses. Instead of trying to protect a fragile human body, the ship's systems worked directly with his enhanced nervous system. When he thought about turning left, the ship turned left before he had finished the thought. When he wanted to fire his weapons, they fired before his finger could even move toward the trigger. The first alien warship died in seconds. Dongman's tactical modifications let him see weaknesses in its design, the same way a normal human could recognize different faces in a crowd. He did not simply blast holes in the enemy ship, he targeted specific points that would cause the maximum amount of damage with the minimum amount of energy. His weapons cut through the alien vessel's armor like it was made of paper, slicing it apart with surgical precision. Pieces of the destroyed ship spun away in all directions, crashing into other vessels in the alien formation and causing even more damage. What had been a perfectly organized battle fleet suddenly turned into chaos as ships tried to avoid the wreckage of their destroyed comrade. What are these things? Admiral Taishkar shouted at his crew as more human fighters tore through his formations like sharks swimming through schools of fish. How are they doing this? His answer came from an unexpected source. Lee Soyoung, flying her own fighter on the opposite side of the battlefield, used her vocal modifications to speak directly through the alien communication systems. Her voice, changed by genetic engineering to work on frequencies that could penetrate any electronic system, filled the bridge of every alien ship simultaneously. "We are what you made us," she said, her words carrying harmonics that made the alien crew members feel physically uncomfortable. "The galaxy wanted humanity eliminated, so we eliminated the parts of humanity that would have shown you mercy." The battle continued for exactly 1 hour. In that time, the Warborn pilots destroyed over 200 alien warships while losing only 3 of their own fighters. They fought with a precision and ruthlessness that terrified the surviving alien crews. These were not the humans the galaxy had known for 50 years, diplomatic, reasonable, willing to compromise. These were humans who had deliberately removed their own limitations and turned themselves into living weapons. The remaining alien ships found themselves fighting an enemy that treated impossible odds like personal challenges to be overcome. Where normal pilots would have retreated when outnumbered, the Warborn pressed their attacks harder. Where conventional wisdom said certain maneuvers were suicide, the Warborn used them as standard tactics. Admiral Taishkar watched his fleet disappear piece by piece, destroyed by an enemy he did not understand. The humans were not just winning, they were demonstrating that everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare was wrong. They moved like the laws of physics were suggestions rather than absolute rules, and they fought like they enjoyed being outnumbered by the time the first hour ended. The great alien fleet that had come to destroy Earth was nothing more than expanding clouds of debris drifting through space, and the Warborn were just getting started. Admiral Vextel had not slept properly in 6 weeks. The war room of the Catharian High Command, once a place where military leaders planned the conquest of rebellious worlds, had become something entirely different. Maps covered every wall, marked with angry red zones that seemed to grow larger each day. These were areas where Warborn operatives had struck and vanished. leaving behind destruction and terror. The Admiral's 4 eyes, each capable of seeing different spectrums of light, studied the latest reports with growing dread. What had started as a simple extermination mission against Earth had become a nightmare that spread across the galaxy like a plague. The humans were not fighting back in any way the aliens understood. They were doing something far worse. "Sir, we have another report from the Meridian system," announced his aide, a young Catherian whose scales had turned pale with fear. The aide's voice shook as he read from his datapad. "The operative we call Ghost of Soul, intelligence believes his real name is Kim Taehan, successfully infiltrated our most secure orbital defense platform." Vextel felt his stomach sink. The Meridian system's orbital platform was supposed to be impossible to breach. It floated in space surrounded by energy shields and protected by automated weapons that could destroy anything that came within 100 kilometers. How much damage did he cause? "That's just it, sir. He didn't destroy anything. He reprogrammed the entire defense network to target our own ships instead of protecting them. When our fleet arrived for refueling, the platform opened fire on them. We lost 12 vessels before anyone realized what was happening. This was the pattern that had emerged over the past weeks. The Warborn did not simply attack and destroy like normal military forces. They turned the galaxy's own systems against itself. They made safe places dangerous and trusted allies into threats. They were not fighting a war, they were teaching the galaxy to fear its own shadows. Colonel O. Menesio had become one of the most feared names in galactic military reports. Her genetic modifications allowed her to survive in the vacuum of space for hours at a time, to withstand radiation that would cook normal humans, and to breathe poisonous atmospheres that would kill most alien species. But her most dangerous enhancement was not physical, it was mental. Her brain had been rewired to understand alien psychology better than the aliens understood it themselves. She could predict how different species would react to threats, what would make them panic, and how to destroy their confidence without firing a single shot. She did not just defeat enemy forces, she made them afraid to trust anything or anyone ever again. On the peaceful world of Harmony Prime, a planet that had not seen violence in over 3,000 years, the population had started building bunkers and buying weapons. They scanned their skies constantly, jumping at shadows and suspicious of their own neighbors. Oh, Menesio had never even visited their world, but her reputation alone had turned a paradise into a place of constant fear. "The humans are not fighting a traditional war," reported intelligence analyst Kelmore to an emergency meeting of the remaining galactic powers. His tentacles writhed with nervous energy as he addressed the assembled representatives. "They are conducting a systematic demonstration of how helpless we really are. In the depths of space, far from any star or planet, Major Yu Junho led a team of Warborn on what they called deep strike missions. These were not attacks on military bases or important facilities. These were surgical strikes against the very idea that anyone in the galaxy was truly safe. Junho's body had been modified to operate in hard vacuum for extended periods. He could survive in space without a suit for over 6 hours, using internal oxygen reserves and radiation shielding built into his genetic code. This allowed him to perform boarding actions that no one had ever considered defending against. He simply walked through space from his ship to enemy vessels, cutting through their hulls like they were made of soft metal. But the most terrifying thing about the Warborn operations was their precision. They did not randomly destroy things or kill everyone they encountered. They removed specific people, captured certain technologies, and left behind messages that made it clear they could have done much worse if they had chosen to. The galaxy was beginning to understand a fundamental difference between their own evolution and humanity's. Most alien species had developed on worlds where they became the dominant predators quickly and then lived in relative peace for millions of years. They had evolved to be strong and intelligent, but not necessarily persistent or adaptable. Humans had evolved on Earth, a planet where everything was trying to kill everything else at all times. They had spent millions of years learning to hunt creatures faster, stronger, and more dangerous than themselves. They had developed not just as predators, but as persistent hunters who never gave up, never stopped learning, and never accepted defeat. Some of the species that had voted for humanity's extinction were simply vanishing. Entire star systems would go silent, their worlds found empty, with no signs of struggle or violence. The populations had simply disappeared, as if they had never existed at all. The remaining civilizations were starting to realize a terrifying truth. They were no longer fighting humans, who happened to be good at warfare. They were being hunted by something that had taken humanity's greatest strength, their absolute refusal to accept defeat, and refined it into a weapon of surgical precision. The galaxy had created exactly what it feared most: humans with no limitations and no mercy. The crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council looked exactly the same as they had 6 months ago, but everything else had changed completely. The same walls that had witnessed humanity's death sentence now hosted a gathering where the roles were completely reversed. Commander Shin Dayun stood at the center of the chamber, occupying the same space where Ambassador Minho had once waited for judgment. But Dayun was not waiting for anything. Her genetically modified body radiated a kind of controlled danger that made the air itself seem to vibrate with tension. The environmental systems that controlled the chamber's atmosphere seemed to respond to her presence, adjusting temperature and humidity as if they were nervous about keeping her comfortable. Her enhanced vocal cords could produce sounds that normal humans could not even hear, frequencies that could cause physical discomfort in most alien species. Around her, the surviving representatives of galactic civilization sat in their assigned seats, but they were no longer judges passing sentence on humanity. They were defendants, hoping desperately for the kind of mercy they had refused to show Earth 6 months earlier. Many of the original council members were simply gone. Their species had vanished entirely during the Warborn campaign, leaving behind empty worlds and unanswered questions. The Galactic Council, as it has existed for the past 2,000 years, is now dissolved, Dayun announced. Her voice carried harmonics that resonated through both normal sound frequencies and subsonic vibrations that the aliens could feel in their bones. Humanity will establish new rules for how civilizations interact with each other. Only species that prove they can coexist peacefully will be allowed to participate. The Valerian High Arbiter, the same crystalline being who had pronounced humanity's death sentence with such cold certainty, tried to maintain some dignity in the face of this reversal. Its translucent body shifted and reformed as it spoke, trying to project authority it no longer possessed. You cannot simply restructure thousands of years of galactic civilization based on your own personal preferences, the Arbiter declared, its voice carrying the same emotionless tone it had used when condemning humanity to extinction. There are laws, treaties, established procedures that govern how based on what. Major Bang Ji-won's voice cut through the chamber like a knife. The Warborn operative seemed to materialize from thin air near the back of the room, proving that even the Council's most secure location could be infiltrated whenever humans chose to do so. His presence made several alien delegates flinch backward in their seats, based on the same principles you used when you voted unanimously to exterminate our entire species. G1 continued, moving forward through the chamber with the fluid grace of someone whose body had been designed specifically for combat. The same laws and procedures that declared humanity too dangerous to exist. The alien delegates looked around nervously, realizing they were witnessing something that had never happened before in galactic history. A species had not only survived attempted genocide, they had used that attempt as motivation to become something far more dangerous than they had been originally. Dr. Kong Hyjin stepped forward to address the assembly. She had been Earth's leading expert on alien biology before the war, and now she served as humanity's primary analyst for understanding how other species thought and behaved. Her voice carried the same clinical detachment that the aliens had once used when discussing humanity's extermination. Your civilizations proved that galactic society was built on a simple principle, she explained to the nervous delegates. Anything that challenged the existing power structure had to be eliminated. You maintained peace by destroying anyone who might disrupt your comfortable arrangements. She gestured toward the empty seats where representatives of extinct species had once sat. We have corrected that problem by removing civilizations that could not adapt to coexistence with species more capable than themselves. The new galactic order began taking shape with mathematical precision that left no room for argument or negotiation. Species that had abstained from voting on humanity's extermination, those few civilizations that had refused to participate in genocide, found themselves offered positions as junior partners in the new system. They would be protected and allowed to prosper under human oversight. But the species that had voted for Earth's destruction discovered that their continued existence was now entirely dependent on humanity's goodwill. Their military forces had been dismantled, their governments restructured, and their populations relocated as humans saw fit. They were not destroyed, but they were no longer independent civilizations. They had become client states of an empire they had tried to prevent from existing. As the session concluded, the surviving alien representatives began to understand truth that terrified them more than any weapon or threat could have. The galaxy had ordered humanity's death because they feared what humans might become if left unchecked. They had been absolutely right to be afraid, but completely wrong to think they could stop it. The Warborn had given the galaxy exactly what it had asked for: the elimination of humanity as it had existed for 50 years. The diplomatic, reasonable, compromise-seeking humans who had joined galactic society were gone forever. In their place stood something that retained every ounce of humanity's legendary persistence and refusal to accept defeat, but had voluntarily removed the limitations of mercy, restraint, and respect for alien independence. The galaxy had wanted to know what humans were truly capable of when they stopped holding themselves back. Now they knew, and they would spend the rest of their existence living with the consequences of that knowledge.